If you aren't already doing some form of pull-up in your routine, you're doing something very wrong. Pull-ups are a fundamental movement that have been integral to humans and more widely apes for millions of years. One of the things that separates us from monkeys, they're stuck running over tiny little branches, whereas we can brachiate. So we can hang, we can pull ourselves up, we can hang from one arm. We've got these incredibly mobile scapula that allows us to raise our arms over our heads. And we should take advantage of this. Simply hanging does wonders for our shoulder mobility. Allowing ourselves to sink deep into a weighted stretch strengthens the entire shoulder girdle, the tendons, the musculature, and also allows us to decompress the spine. Pull-ups are incredibly practical as opposed to something like a lat pull-down machine, as they don't require anywhere near as much equipment, they don't require a machine for a start, and also they mean that you can save hundreds and hundreds of pounds on only spending money on the weight that you actually need, as you're going to be using your entire body weight, which for most people is going to be all you need for quite a while. One of the limitations of using a fixed bar is that it's fixed. It fixes your wrist into whatever position you've gripped the bar. So depending on the grip width you're going for, you're going to be hyperextending your wrist in one way or the other. Whereas if you use something like handles or rings, your wrists are free to move in whatever motion your body finds most comfortable. So what exactly is happening when we do a pull-up in terms of mechanics and muscles? Well, the main two muscles that you're working, arguably, are the lats and the teres major. Teres major is often known as the little lat because it broadly serves the same function as the lat itself. It can sort of be seen in a similar way to the upper chest and the chest. Often the two can be worked together, but there are modifications you can use to bias one or the other. The main way you can do that with pull-ups is grip width. Broadly, the closer the grip, the more lat it's going to be, because shoulder extension is the main purpose of the lat. It runs up your back and then sort of up here. So it originates down quite low and then runs all the way up onto your upper arm, onto your humerus. The teres major attaches much higher, so it does broadly serve the same function of extending the arm and pulling it closer, but due to its leverage and its attachment point, it serves us better when pulling in from above. So wide grip will serve the teres major generally, and a close grip will serve the lats. Obviously then you can then get onto things like pullovers, but that's broadly true. The other major way we can modify pull-ups is the grip that we take. So a supinated grip will use more biceps due to them being more advantageous in that position. And also when you supinate your arms, you take more of a hunched position. And what that does is it disengages the back and leverages the lats more heavily. And the opposite is true with the overhand grip. We tend to retract our scapula more as we pull up, making it more upper back, slightly less lat. And also in terms of the arms, it will work our radiobrachialis more. The third one is a neutral grip. This is the strongest pulling motion and the grip that I recommend, as it, yes, is more brachialis, which is the muscle that sits below the bicep, but also uses the biceps and the radiobrachialis as well. This means that they are going to fail, your arms are going to fail more on parity with your lats, which are obviously much stronger. So I recommend that because this is a lat exercise, not an arm exercise. The two ways that you can progress pull-ups are either by adding weight or by modifying the movement. The best way to modify the movement is to tuck your knees or do an L-sit, as this will stretch the lats, make it harder to perform the exercise. I choose not to do these simply because I feel like my abs, even when the knees are tucked rather than the L-sit, tend to give out before my lats. And again, this is a lat exercise, not an ab exercise. Then there's weight. That's what I'd recommend. And the way I'd recommend you do that is by using a dip belt rather than something like a weight vest. Whereas a weight vest, loading potential is limited by the vest itself, and you'll be forced to buy a new bigger vest should you need one. And also it limits your shoulder motion. If you've got a big, thick, hopefully thick and sturdy vest over your shoulder, it won't stop you doing pull-ups, it's just a little bit awkward. Whereas when you've got a dip belt completely away from your shoulder girdle, it's not going to get in your way at all, and the loading potential is more or less unlimited. But the one thing I would do is recommend keeping the weight quite close to your body. Maybe rest your knees on top of it, because if it starts to swing, then you're going to be fighting the momentum, and that's going to throw you off on the exercise. There are a couple of extra things I wanted to mention, and they are exercises you can do in lieu of pull-ups. There's been a couple of situations in my life where I haven't really had access to a pull-up bar and really had no way of implementing one. The typical would be to have a pull-up bar in the middle of a doorway, but for various reasons this isn't always practical, particularly if it's not your house and you're not able to make modifications. In that instance, there are two exercises I recommend. The first is a rack chin. This is quite practical if you're someone that does, ignoring my advice, have a bench press, or a barbell rather. And it's quite simple. You maintain the vertical posture by resting your heels on a bench, and then simply rack the barbell, put your feet up on the bench, and pull. And again, you can do either grip, wider than that. And in actual fact, this is quite a good regression, because unlike inverted rows, which are often used as a regression for pull-ups, and they're good, they are good, the muscle overlap isn't perfect. Due to the vertical nature of your torso, it really is the same as a pull-up but with less weight, and has more parity than a pull-up with, say, a band around your waist or your knee, where that's going to slingshot you at certain points in the movement. The resistance profile is not the same. It's simply weight but less weight, more or less like doing pull-ups with your legs chopped off. The other alternative would be a form of row. This one's far less practical, and you're going to be limited by your low back. So I would say if you're going to do this, use a somewhat lighter weight. But it's what I call a super decline dumbbell row. And it's quite simple really. It's hinging over as far as you can. It helps to be good at things like Jefferson curls if you've built some resilience in your spine. I wouldn't actually recommend this to a beginner. This isn't a regression. This is more, I have nothing else. Literally all I have is a step and dumbbells. If that situation ever occurs, this might work for you. But what you're really trying to do is mimic the vertical path. You're not going to quite get there. This could be seen as sort of a toss-up between this and maybe pullovers, but because this has arm bend, it's more of a true compound. But it's how it sounds. It's hinging over as much as you can and then pulling up. In hindsight, I didn't really do the step, but it's something. So that's more or less that. If you're not already doing some form of pull-up, do. And that's it.